Joining me now in Santiago is veteran Chilean politician Sergio Bitar. Most recently, he was the Minister of Public Works under former President Michelle Bachelet, but he's been politically active for decades. He was detained after the coup in 1973 and exiled before returning in the 80s to actively oppose the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. Sir, pleasure having you on The Newsmakers. Tell me why it doesn't seem as if Pinera's proposed reforms and sacking the cabinet has been enough for those people who are out on the streets.
It's not enough because it's a movement of size that we haven't seen in our history. All of us, we are very surprised with the magnitude of the social mobilization. And parallel to that, a magnitude of looting and anarchist violence attacking the subways and other infrastructures that we have not seen in our history either. So it's hard to analyze and understand how the country that has the best economy in Latin America has a strong democracy with parties compared to other Latin American countries explodes in this way. So my feeling is that's a long-term process towards an economic and social system much more devoted to solidarity and equality. That will take time, and people will not stop. So we will have a long process. That's my understanding. Now, in the short term, you have to take and make strong decisions. Some of them have been taken. And we hope, as opposition, I belong to the opposition, that we can strengthen our democracy, to start a new constitution, to build a new social pact, and the government will understand that. It's not clear that they will do.
The point that he was making was that this is the fault of successive governments. So while he did admit that there is too much inequality and there is a lot of wealth that is not going around, he's also blamed previous governments when you guys were in charge as well, Michelle Bachelet and so on. Is he right? Has this been something that's been a long time coming and every government has failed?
Yeah, the feelings of inequality have a long history. They have started many years ago. So the center-left parties that were leading the country for 24 out of the 30 years after the dictatorship made lots of changes in economic reforms, tax reforms, education, health, housing, justice, human rights, but it was always in some way obstructed by the conservative parties that saw these reforms as against their own interests. So there are, you have to self-criticize what you have done, but there are different responsibilities in this process. So are these social movements enough to shake the political parties? I think that yes. Are the opposition parties in conditions to take the new elections, win the new elections and govern? Not yet. They are divided. So we are living a period of an important change at this moment. But I am confident that we can stop violence and at the same time to move towards more participation, more dialogue that we don't have enough, and to strengthen our system for the future.
So thousands detained, hundreds injured, at least a dozen people dead. Some estimates have it as over 20. It's not absolutely clear. And the UN wants to look into it and investigate. But when we look at the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights, it's the former leader, Michelle Bachelet, on the other side of the political aisle here. Is that going to be helpful or harmful if Ms. Bachelet comes forward and says, hey, you're committing grievous, terrible crimes as the government? Is that going to cause more trouble within Chile?
I would say that for most of the Chileans, human rights is a critical element in our culture, and we have to protect that strongly. So the presence of former President Bachelet and sending this group, and the government also positively saying all groups of human rights that wants to come and see are welcome. So that's very important. We have in the country an institute for human rights that is an independent institute whose leader is a member of the opposition, and they are controlling everything. So the point is that we have to, and that's very hard, to bring back calm and order so that even the most modest people can go to work, can enter the subway, can buy food, because anarchist groups have been looting. And so this part of the picture, I think there is a big agreement that you have to control that in order to have order to push for social change. And human rights are critical. So every part of the country is supporting the presence of people from the United Nations sent by President Bachelet.
Right. And interesting times ahead, because there's going to be a big summit in December, COP25, the UN Climate Change Conference taking place in Santiago. It's going to be interesting to see whether the streets will be quiet by then and what reforms have been made. Sergio Bitar, it's been a pleasure speaking to you here on the Newsmakers. I thank you very much for joining us. I'm looking forward to talking to you again.